Hello and welcome to Talk to Stu with me, Stuart Magoo, and hopefully you can all hear me. Do give me a thumbs up if you can, or pop a message in the chat. I can see Ed's joined us, also Caroline, Phil Thomas as well, so hello to you guys, and anybody else that's joined us this evening. Thanks for logging on and supporting the channel, and hopefully tonight I'll be able to answer some of your questions. Unfortunately, Becky's still not back with us at the moment. She's caught up with Christmassy activities and will be back with us in the new year. So she does send her love to everyone. So my lovely brother, the Duke of Nuke, is moderating this evening and will be passing all your questions to me over on the channel. And I've just realised I haven't got my tooth in, so bear with me. There we go. Yes, now I look normal. So yeah, a couple of bits of news tonight, but not a great deal of news, which is probably good after the massive piece of news that we had last week, the week before. I put out a video about the raft of changes that have been ramped up from the autumn statement. A lot of it we knew was coming anyway, and there had been statements put out a bit earlier, but it just sort of ratified all of that and kind of gave a bit of a background in their rhetoric to what they were thinking. And there may well be some questions about that whole thing this evening, so I'm not going to go into that too much. There's been a couple of news stories that have popped up which aren't specifically disability benefit related exactly, but they do sort of have a bit of a bearing on there. So first of all, I've got some, let's see if I can do this, if it works. I'm going to try and switch over now so you can see this report here. Hey, getting proper techie now. Exclusive, published on the 4th of December by Teve Markson. DWP civil servants describe unbearable workloads amid all-time low staffing levels. So this is quite a good article. I do recommend reading it if you're interested in that kind of thing. It's on civilserviceworld.com. Obviously, we're not civil servants, so you might find that a bit dry in some respects. But what's interesting about this is it's giving us an insight into actually what's going on behind the scenes at most local job centres and on telephone support lines, things like that the DWP have set up. One of the big frustrations for us is obviously being kept on hold for significant lengths of time, finding that we put in requests in our universal credit journals and those requests aren't being answered in a timely way. Maybe we're sending in information and it's not coming back to us. What we're hearing from the unions that support the DWP staff in the job centres is that there are huge numbers of people that are starting a job and then leaving within 6 months because of depression. There are a huge number of people who are off work, long-term sick with stress and depression brought on by doing the job, and indeed they are finding it difficult to recruit and things like that. So this gives us a kind of bit of background, I suppose, to what's going on and how that's sort of impacting all of these things, such as work capability assessments, universal credit claims being processed in the right way, things in terms of dealing with your work coach, that sort of thing. Now, for us, there's nothing we can really do about that. And how does that impact you in the short term? It might just mean there's longer delays with things that you're having to process. But also it does say that there is less support available because of this for people that are identified as vulnerable claimants. So if you consider yourself to fall into that category and you are hoping that you will get support through your local job centre, and it varies from region to region, so it might be that your local job centre is doing quite well, but quite a lot of them are not. It might be that you can't rely on those guys to raise any issues that you have. Probably if you are vulnerable and you feel like you need support, or you feel like you're in danger, that there might be some sort of safeguarding issue, it is probably best to contact your GP and speak to them. Speak to somebody if you've got a specific condition that would be supported by a charity, for example. So, the Alzheimer's Society support people with dementia, Macmillan Nurses support people with cancer, so things like that. So do a bit of internet research, reach out, even speak to neighbours and friends, even if you don't know them very well. But yeah, so basically don't rely on the DWP for support at the minute is the message there. Now, of course, the Department of Work and Pensions have responded with their usual thing. We're committed to supporting the well-being of our staff and provide access to a comprehensive range of assistance for their physical and mental health. We have recruitment plans in place to maintain key services, providing excellent opportunities for existing staff and new recruits who are playing a vital role in our next generation welfare reforms to help thousands back into jobs, grow the economy and drive down inflation. As a journalist, obviously I have to read that bit as well. But yeah, my views on that. Now, the other thing that it's not really news, but it's just a suggestion from me of something that you could look into following on the internet, and it's a website that I follow quite a bit, and I find it a really useful source of information, and that's the Disability News Service. This is a great website. If you've not seen it before, do go and have a look. It's got a lot of information and news stories about art, culture, education, employment, housing, transport. They do a lot of reports on activism and campaigning, and of course they have a section on benefits and poverty. Quite often we sort of feel like there's nobody out there fighting the good fight, or that we're sort of kind of alone in what we're doing. We're in our homes, wherever we are, accessing things on the phone all the time, and you can feel a bit cut off from everybody, and you sort of feel like it's just negativity all the time. Whereas this website is quite good. You can see that there are people out there who are fighting the good fight. Now, obviously, with watching reading any sort of news stories, there is an element with this of a lot of the stories being quite negative. So don't spend too much time on there reading it if you're suffering with stress and depression and things like that. But do bear in mind it can be a really useful resource to find information from. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is switch over to doing the questions. So we've got more time for questions as there's less news, which is really good. So Phil's lined up a few questions for me. We've got Caroline, To Stu, Nick Wilson, Julia Hurley. So we'll work down this list, and if you've got any more questions, keep them coming in. Let's have a look. We think ESA stops, but PIP continues. If this is the case, do we still have to reapply for PIP? Different name in Scotland. So yeah, so what this is talking about here. So first of all, ESA is moving everybody over onto universal credit, as we know, and then at some point the work capability assessment is going to be withdrawn as well. The plan for that is to end the work capability assessment in 2025, and a person's fitness for work, it's proposed, will be defined by them receiving PIP, which, as I've said before, is strange because PIP isn't really designed around whether you're fit to work or not. It's designed around what disabilities you have and what support needs you have. So whether there'll be any changes to the PIP process, we don't know. If you have been given a certain length of time that you're awarded PIP for before you have to go through a reassessment, then that will continue as normal. You will still need to be reassessed at the right time. The difficulty with this, and where most disability charities and organisations who are involved in this in some way are concerned, is because with PIP continuing and ESA or Universal Credit Work Capability Assessment and the Limited Capability for Work-Related Activity element being removed, a lot of people who are claiming ESA but don't get PIP will be forced into a position of having to apply for PIP. So there's a couple of issues there. One, we all know the PIP process is very difficult. We know that the number of people that need to go to have mandatory reconsideration and appeals is still very high. We also know that those people are, more often than not successful when they go through to appeal. So, yeah, it is a bit of a challenge in that way, but also there's a big challenge in terms of the number of people that are going to be applying for PIP all at the same time, and we still have that backlog of reviews to deal with, which is, I'm still seeing some people waiting, up to 18 months. I helped somebody with a PIP review last summer, and it's literally just gone through. And of course, we've had to start a mandatory reconsideration process. We sent that off last week. So that's about 15 months. So yeah, it's a worrying thing. But unless you don't have PIP, you will just be reassessed in the normal way. If you don't have PIP and you are on ESA or Universal Credit, out of work sickness element, then of course when the work capability element is removed, you will then have to look at applying for PIP. So, To Stu, I have a question for you. For 5 years, I've been struggling with depression and sleeping problems. A few days ago, the agency from which I rent the apartment informed me that my landlord is selling the apartment. I'm afraid that I will end up on the street. I have been living in this apartment for 10 years. What can I do? Is it possible to buy it? The price of this apartment is $75,000. Please help. I'm not aware of any schemes that would allow you to buy it, but what I would say is your first stop or first place you should contact for support with this would be Shelter. Okay, so let me just do a quick Google on Shelter. So Shelter are really useful in that they, depending on your area, they help people with all sorts of housing issues that come up, particularly no-fault evictions, which is very difficult, and that sounds like that's what's happening to you, is a no-fault eviction, properties being sold and so on. Quite often landlords put this into process and they haven't ticked all the right boxes and dotted all the right T's. So Shelter often do sort of what they call surgery type things, where people can go along and discuss their problem and they'll pick up on those issues as well. So if you have a look on the Shelter website, it can be really helpful. Let's see, here we go, homelessness advice. So do get in touch with your local council as quickly as possible. If you've been given 2 months and you are going to be made homeless, you will be made given what they call homelessness. You'll be classed as homeless from that point as soon as the eviction notice is in. It might be a Section 21 that you're issued with. You then provide that with the council. They'll put you on the housing register, and they will they'll advise you if you're able to buy the house, or if there's any schemes to do that. They'll also look at, if you are in a position to buy, whether there might be a kind of part rent, part buy scheme that applies to you, and they'll put you on the housing register as well. And you may even qualify for emergency accommodation, depending on what's available with your in your area. And so there are other situations where you might qualify as homeless or count as homeless, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of information on this website. It's really good. And of course, this is shelter.org.uk. So if Phil is listening right now, if you're able to bang that one into the chat for me, that link, that would be fantastic. So hopefully they will be able to advise you. Let me find where the phone number is, because that's going to be the thing that people want as well. Join us now. Yeah, but how do we contact you, Shelter? Get help. Emergency helpline, talk to us. Let's go here. Emergency helpline. So the emergency helpline is 0808 800 4444. So that's if you're immediately homeless, have nowhere to stay, worried about losing your home in the next 2 months, or at risk of harm or abuse. So if that applies to you, give them a call. That number again is 0808 800 4444. Excellent service there. So let's go back and have a look at the next question. So thank you for that one. Good question. How are councils supposed to apply disability related expenses into care charges financial assessment? Okay. That is an interesting one. How are councils supposed to apply disability-related expenses into care charges financial assessment? So this is an interesting thing. I have done a video on financial assessments, which is on my channel, care home charges and financial assessments, and I do go into that in a lot more detail. So Nick, if you're still listening, do go and have a look at that one. But I will answer it in brief. So with the financial assessment, generally they will look into certain things that are considered disability related expenses. So when you get the financial assessment form sent out to you, it can be quite a weighty tome to deal with, first of all, and mostly the forms aren't brilliantly designed, so they can take quite a while to go through. Now, your local authority has got a legal requirement to support you with filling in that form, and they should at least have a telephone number. In the old days, the social worker would sit down and fill it in with you, but as that doesn't happen anymore because of funding cuts, thank you, Conservative Party, some people might say, oh, well, it was the Labour Party's fault for spending all the money in the first place. We could get into that, but let's not. They will have a telephone line, or they should have a telephone line, and when you phone them up, they'll go through with you and they'll explain to you what specific expenses a person has. So it might be things like excessive use of washing machines. You might be washing clothes and things like that much more often than you have in the past. It might be that you have things like extra electricity and energy costs, those kind of things. And there is a section for that within the financial assessment form, and you'll go in and put an average price that you're spending on all of those things. What they will also want to do is look at the outgoing payments out of the bank account for the person that's being assessed. It might be for yourself, it might be for a family member that you're supporting, but they will want to see all those bank statements as well to kind of corroborate that that is the kind of amount of money that is being spent on those things. But as I say, I have done a video that's a bit more about care, charges and financial assessment generally, and yeah, it's different in each local authority to exactly what they ask for during the financial assessment. Mostly it's pretty much the same, but there tends to be a little tweaks here or there, so I can't really do a video on the financial assessment specifically going step by step through it, unfortunately, because it will be different depending on what area of the country you're in, and of course whether you're in Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland or Britain. So thank you for that question. Good question. Do you know if the people with disabilities will be getting an extra cost of living payment on top of the 150 we had in June? So there are, as far as I'm aware, no plans to give any further payments to people that are just in receipt of disability benefits. So for everybody that was on universal credit, then you of course get the cost of living payments. There was one earlier in the year, there's one in October, there'll be another one in April, October, November, I think it came through. But as far as I'm aware, for people that just get disability benefits, that £150 was the only one that's coming. However, do have a look into the Warm Home Discount Scheme. You might qualify for that. That could be a reduction that's applied to your energy bills and things like that. There's a lot of information about that sort of thing on Money Saving Expert. And of course, don't forget everyone, we all get our £10 Christmas bonus. So look forward to that. How do you get PIP assessors to take vestibular disorders into proper accounts, as it's both physical and neurological, yet they don't even consider it correctly? Remember that PIP thing that I mentioned just before, where we're having to go through mandatory reconsideration? That's specifically about vestibular disorders, funnily enough. Yeah, they don't take it seriously, and it is very difficult to prove that. So it's all about getting that diagnosis, first of all, from whoever it is that's assessing you. Vestibular disorders can be picked up and assessed by a neurologist, but also could be looked at by ear, nose and throat departments and specialists there as well. So it's about making it really very clear as to how that is affecting you and when it comes into play. So there's a lot of difficulties, particularly around question 13 and question 14 on the PIP form. So question 13 is going out, and that is specifically about anxiety and things like that. And people with vestibular disorders experience high levels of anxiety. It's perfectly normal for when you start spinning and feel dizzy, your sort of limbic system kicks in and you get a panic attack immediately. That is perfectly normal and natural. Feel like you're falling, you have no control over that. So it's about making it really clear that that's what's happening, that it causes you panic when that anxiety and distress comes on. That it can prevent you from leaving the home, prevent you from going out and doing things. Also, on top of that, there's so much more planning and preparation that needs to happen before you go on a journey. Also, can you use transport? Can you go in a car? Can you go on a bus? Can you go on a train? Or does that bring on an attack of these things? Just to explain for everyone else, vestibular is this part in your ear that does your balance. You probably picked that up from what I was saying, but I just forgot that I didn't explain that. So very difficult. Also, moving around, there's a real safety aspect for this. Are you likely to fall over? Do you need somebody with you to support you? Do you use a stick? Do you have to use a walking frame? A lot of people with vestibular disorders have to use a walking frame even though they're only 30 or 40 years old, something like that. So those kind of things all need to be taken into account. Now, it's always good, if you've got this kind of condition, to ask your doctor to see an occupational therapist. Okay, the waiting list's a year long pretty much, but if you do get to see an occupational therapist and they assess you and they say, here's some equipment that you might need to stop you from falling over or to help you balance, then that report can be submitted as well and back those things up. There's questions coming in so quick, so excuse me for romping through it particularly quickly. How's working tax credit people have been taking off the £900 cost of living? How's working tax credit? I think working tax credit with the cost of living, as far as I'm aware, that's not my area. I have to say, I always have a caveat that I really don't know a great deal about working tax credits. I know that everybody's being forced over onto universal credit. So, to be honest, I can't answer that question. Sorry, Mark. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I will. If we got time at the end, I'll come back and do a quick Google on that one and see what I can find. I'm on universal credit, limited capability for work, and appointments have switched to triage. Since this has happened, the pressure on applying for jobs has markedly increased. What am I reasonably expected to do? Unfortunately, the way the rules are, and this is why all these changes are so unpopular with concerned disability groups, one of the issues here is that you are expected to do what is asked of you. The difficulty is going to be negotiating that so that if those expectations are not reasonable, that's where the challenge is going to be. As I always recommend with this, it is important that you get support locally from somebody who's able to look at this, and maybe somebody external that may be able to advise you on that. So it sort of depends on what condition you have. There might be a charitable organisation in your local area that supports you with your local condition, locally. But I'm always loath to say go to the CAB, because they are generally over demanded of at the moment, overprescribed. So getting an appointment is difficult and those kind of things. But if you are in a position and you have to fight this on your own, I would say get together as much evidence as possible about what is reasonable that you could do, and approach it in as positive a way as possible by saying, okay, I can't do this, but I could do this instead. If they're telling you to take on volunteering and they say to you, why don't you go and volunteer at an Escape to the Woods children's group, and you might say to yourself, well, I can't go stomping up and down into the woods, but what I could do is volunteer at my local charity shop for 2 mornings a week instead, sorts of things. So there's got to be a bit of negotiation there. You will be expected to do something. Maybe you can get them to tweak it back a little bit. As I mentioned, you might find that difficult to do through your account because of how things are overstretched at the DWP, but get together as much evidence as possible. Get together any statements that you can from people that are supporting you in some way. Particularly professionals are the best. Question for me, Stu. Sorry, it's not a great answer to that one, but it is hard work. Go contact your local council. Go onto your local council website and have a look on there. They will explain, or it should put you in touch with local one-to-one support advocacy type services that may be able to help you. And even if you don't think whether they will help you or not, just phone them and ask. They'll probably signpost you to somewhere. There's usually people like me working at those kind of places who will say, oh, well, we can't help, but here's someone who can. Last time I had an ESA work capability assessment in 2014, I was eventually put in the support group after appealing. Why have they not sent me? I find it odd. I also get standard PIP for both. Why have they not sent me a form? Or why have they not sent you a certificate of, well, not certificate, but a statement of which group you've been put in? They should have done. Do chase that up. Do bear in mind, if you haven't got documents that you think you should have got from the DWP, you can always request the DWP to resend them to you. So every year they usually send out a statement of facts basically about your reward, usually in around April, start the new financial year. That's for PIP, for ESA, for Universal Credit. It tends to come through your online journal, but you can always request that again. If also, the other thing, if they aren't providing you with the information you need for whatever, then you can always use what's known as a subject access request under data protection rules. Specify exactly what it is you need, for what period, how much information, all of that. Quick letter, send that off to them, and they'll send you whatever it is you need. So just make sure you use the phrase subject access request. And they will have to treat it in that way, and they will have to respond within 28 working days. There's some fantastic loads of messages going on the screen. I'm sorry I'm not jumping in on those, but hopefully Phil's able to do that. I can see he's put a thing out there. Yeah, for anybody who's typing in messages, try not to use all caps when you type. If it's all in capital letters, YouTube will just kick you out for it, because it thinks you're spamming. I sent my PIP review in 2 months ago, and they said they received it but heard nothing since. You might be waiting a while longer, David. Don't panic about that though, because your benefit award will continue up until the point where they have finished the assessment. Now, what has been happening recently is they will send out a statement to say that they will continue paying you this, and you are continue to be awarded, and your assessment date is kind of pushed back, but that you don't need to do anything because they have your assessment form. If you get that letter, that's quite a good thing, because what that means is if they decide that you're not eligible for PIP anymore for whatever reason, that means you won't have to pay it back. Okay, because what was happening is people were left waiting for quite a long period of time, and then having their review, and then they were having losing their PIP, having to pay some back, going through mandatory reconsideration and appeal, and then it all having to be paid back to them when they won their appeal. So, that's a crazy system. So what they are doing now, because of those delays, is sending letters out to people saying, don't worry, you don't need to do anything. Your PIP award has been extended and your review has been extended. We've got all the information. You don't need to do anything. So they tend to send those letters out between the 6 and 12 month mark. I can't say specifically when, but they do go out. So don't panic if you've had that. But you will be waiting for at least 6 to 12 months, David, I would think. Are there any proposed changes to carers allowance? None that I'm aware of, I'm afraid. None that I'm aware of, and it is a big area of criticism, because carers allowance is something that, you have to be caring for somebody for 30 hours a week or more, which is saving the government. We did just talk about financial assessments, so that's what social services do to find out how much they've got to pay towards a person's care. And if you're a carer, if you're supporting somebody for more than 30 hours a week, when a carer would be if you weren't there, then you're saving the government thousands and thousands of pounds a year, and they give you £64 a week. It's just disgusting. If you're under Universal Credit, you could possibly be getting Universal Credit and carers allowance. So do look into that. Do get yourself a full benefits assessment to make sure that there aren't any other things that you're missing out on. You can do that at Turn to Us. That's TURN, the number 2, us.org.uk. If you go there, they've got a benefits calculator on there. Put in all your information and it will tell you at the end. I've been put into the health group. I've been sick since March. How often do you get assessed? You should have been told when your next assessment would be. So this relates to the earlier question. about getting the information that you should get from them. If you haven't had it, then do get in touch with them and find out if there is a review date. If you've been put into the support group or the limited capability for work related activity group, if it's under universal credit, then that is sort of similar to PIP. They do 3 years, 5 years, 10 years and things like that. It just entirely depends on your health condition and whether it's likely to get better or not and all those things. Do you still get the extra payments for limited capability for work related activity on UC, or are they stopping? They will be not exactly stopping but changing, and if you don't have PIP, you will have to get PIP to continue to get those after they scrap the work capability assessment, as they will be switching to a system whereby a person gets a sort of unfit to work premium added to their universal credit based on whether or not they've got personal independence payment. That's what they've said is going to happen. Of course, anybody that moves from ESA to universal credit will get transitional protection and will keep their rate and so on and so forth. But there will be changes around that. Don't panic too much, because those changes haven't been rolled out yet, and we don't exactly know how they are going to work properly at the moment, because the DWP don't even know, and they are working it all out. My current PIP claim is due to run out in July, but I got a text from the DWP a few days back. They are starting my review. Is this normal to be done so early? I still don't have the paperwork, etc. Yes, that's very normal. They're supposed to do it 6 months ahead. So the idea originally was that people would do the review form, and then by the time they'd done the review, sent in the form, had the phone assessment or face-to-face assessment, got it all back, and of course their thing continued. It wasn't denied for any reason. The payments would continue at the end with no interruptions for you. Of course, in reality, there's massive backlogs, and so that isn't happening. So yes, they do come out 6 months ahead, but it doesn't mean that your payment will stop in 6 months or now or anything like that. So don't panic with that. Just the good thing is that does give you time to find one-to-one professional support with filling out the form, and they will happily grant you an extension to that if you phone them up and say, well, I've found somebody who can help me filling out the form, but there's a waiting list and they won't see me till next month. They'll say, that's fine, we'll extend it for you. Just give them a call. Okay, it's 45 minutes sitting waiting for somebody to answer the phone, but generally they're pretty easygoing about that. What about cancer patients? Will we be getting any help with electricity terminal? The help available to people is the Warm Home Discount Scheme and all of those things. There's nothing specific for any one particular health condition. It depends on your means, basically. Are you on universal credit? Will you qualify? Those are the questions. Again, go to the Turn to Us benefits calculator, or other benefits calculators are available online, and have a look at that to see if you are receiving the right amount of benefits. And also most of these have been updated to include the warm home discounts and things like that, to see if you will get any reductions to your bills and things like that. I'm just going to take a breather for a minute, because I've just literally gone bah, 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 bah. Sorry everyone, thank you for watching and bearing with me. Countdown to Power, I like that, that's a good name. Yes, like Phil, my brother, Duke of Nuke. I'm not supposed to say his name, damn it. Anyway, Countdown to Power. I'm probably entitled to PIP, but I'm terrified that if I apply for it and I get refused, they'll stop my UC as well, and I'll have to reapply for everything and probably starve to death waiting. That won't happen. The two things at the moment are separate. So I would say apply for PIP as soon as you can. It is a frightening experience. It is stressful. It is problematic. Do seek out support before you start the process if you can. Look for people that can support you with filling out the PIP form local to you. If you've not filled out a PIP form before, my videos are there. If you can't get that support, my videos are there. I've got 3 videos. They're long, but I will go through in those videos, every question, telling you what you should write, how much detail to give, what kind of evidence you need to supply to support it, all of those things. Get on, do that now. It's not going to get easier in the next couple of years. That's the thing. But universal credit and personal independence payment are not linked. Okay, so your work capability assessment and your PIP assessment are completely separate. One does not inform the other. You will not lose one because you didn't qualify for the other. That's all I'll say. So, Sean Vulcandale, if you have a successful claim for PIP and the award is for 5 years, will you need a new assessment if the government changes from Conservative to another? Don't know. Can't answer that. Depends whether it's all scrapped or not. If you had a review and there was a new system in place and that was coming up, it would strike me that probably you would be reviewed and put onto the new system, whatever was in place. You could also probably cancel what you were receiving and request moving on to the new one. I think in reality, not reality, but in real terms, it's unlikely that the Labour government are going to scrap the PIP process. If a Labour government comes in, what they're more likely to do is kind of tweak the process and make it a bit more workable. And to be fair, essentially, it's not really PIP itself. I mean, it is PIP. PIP's got just the whole descriptors thing is just rubbish. It doesn't work. But aside from that, the actual idea of assessing a person to get the right level of support, I don't know, you could call it something like, I don't know, disability living allowance or something like that, and it could be less about numbers and how many points you score and more about how things affect you. I don't know. I wonder if anyone's ever thought of that. But yeah, if Labour come in, they're probably just going to tweak the system to make it work in a different way rather than replacing it entirely with something else. Charlie Crunch, good name. Hello Stu, I'm new to the channel. I have curvature of the spine and was told by the Atos people from the DWP that I can't claim PIP. Is this true? No, it is not. That's all I'm going to say on that one. It is not true. Watch my PIP videos. Why haven't I had a medical for 9 years? Sorry, my question wasn't worded correctly. That's Owen. So that's going back. Let me go back. I don't know. I think it sounds to me like you were put in the support group permanently by that, Owen. So yeah, that would mean that you wouldn't need a review and you'll continue to get that. And when it comes to you moving to universal credit, which will happen sometime between now and 2029, you will get transitional protection and you should stay in that group. But obviously that will be subject to changes to the work capability assessment. But if you're already receiving PIP, then you should be fine with all of that. William Brown. Hi Stu, I receive a war pension and currently on old style ESA support group. This is income. Am I better off going over to UC? Wait until they get in touch with you, William. Don't move in that direction now. I wouldn't think you'd be better off. You'll probably be pretty much on exactly the same income. So generally speaking, that might be up and down by a few quid here or there. But again, if you're not sure, do a benefits check online if you're able to do that, or go and see somebody at the CAB or somebody like that to do a benefits assessment. Oh, I'm starting to catch up. Hooked on classics. I've been on ESA support group for a long time. I can't remember how long, and I'm petrified of contacting anyone in fear of upsetting the apple cart. Any suggestions? Is that relating to an earlier question? Is this about claiming PIP? Hooked on classics, Simone, if you're still there, if you could just give me a little bit more information on that question, that would be really helpful, because I'm not sure who it is you would be contacting or why you would need to. But if it's about applying for PIP, yeah, that would be similar to what I was saying earlier. You know, you'll be, I won't say you'll be fine, but those two things are separate. Why do you get a payment to support you on limited capability work-related activity, but not on LCW? That's quite an esoteric question. I would say politics is the answer to that. You know, it's a political choice, basically. There's no reason for it. The Conservative Party would argue that they remove that to save the public purse. Funny how they didn't think about the public purse during COVID with all those PPE contracts and, you know, the billions wasted on track and trace. And I do mean billions. You know, they didn't think about that then, but they are for this. I don't know. It's a political choice. It used to be there. It's not now. What can I say? I don't know. So there we go. Where are we now? We're coming up. We've got 15 minutes left. Oh yeah, watch the emojis, people. Otherwise, Streamlabs might kick you out. Could also be less about forcing many people through the mandatory reconsideration process. Yep. What about ADP in Scotland? I have an assessment to be done in February, 2 years after they took away my mobility car after 11 and a half years. Well, the ADP is very, very similar to PIP. You know, I was expecting it to be very, very different, and I was quite keen to see this new model that was being rolled out, and actually it's very, very similar to PIP. So I think the process, from what I've heard, is very similar. They use the descriptors. I mean, it's, you know, on paper it's just PIP by another name. Once I've actually sat and looked at the forms and gone through the assessment process, and some of the feedback is just sort of saying, well, it's a little bit better administered than the DWP is, and things tend to be going through a bit quicker. But most of the assessment seems to be much the same. So I think it's still early days. It's only been running 12 months, 24 months at the most. So it's still early days to really see whether we're seeing the same number of things going through to appeal, whether the decisions that are being made are the right decisions or the wrong decisions, things like that. Really, difficult to say at the moment. But on paper, the nuts and bolts of how the assessment is done is basically the same. So hopefully it's... oh, that's good. I've just seen Susan One and Only said she got PIP from following my videos. I think she might have told me that before, but that's fantastic. I'm really glad about that. Optical Man makes a very good point. They don't care about what you can't do, only what you can do. William Brown's put a thing on there. Check turn to us. Yep, that's the one. Do that. Any advice on being on PIP and Universal Credit and selling online? That's a good question, actually. So, any income that you have, if you're on Universal Credit, should be declared to Universal Credit. So, if you're selling, you know, your bike, because you don't ride a bike anymore, and you think, well, it's just sitting there, might as well sell it, then that's kind of fine. That doesn't really count as income. But if you are selling things online regularly and you're kind of operating as a shop, then that is a form of business, and essentially that is an income. It is a regular payment that is coming in, and that should be demonstrated to people on universal credit, so that you're not putting yourself in the position of not declaring your income to them, and also not updating them of any changes. Now, if you are in a position where you have been declared as unfit to work, and you are in the limited capability for work-related activity group, and you start selling things online, and then you inform Universal Credit that you're doing that, then that might mean that you're essentially saying you are fit to work, and yeah, that could prove problematic for you. But that might actually be a thing. You might say, well, I am actually doing quite a good business here from home, and I am working, and I want to be recognised for that. And actually, you might be able to be supported doing that, and access a scheme like Access to Work, and things like that. It shouldn't affect your PIP. That's the other thing. It shouldn't really affect your PIP. If your disabilities are your disabilities, if you were, going out, delivering parcels in a van as a new form of employment, and you said you have difficulty getting in and out of a car, or things like that, then that would affect your PIP possibly. But yeah, I think somebody needs to take DWP to court over their right to look at people's personal bank accounts. It is being looked at. It's degrading and infringement of an individual rights. It is being looked at. There are a number of people that are looking into that, Joanne, to see if it's possible. Hooked on classics, going back. So, yes. Petrified of contacting anyone in fear of upsetting the apple cart. It's always tricky. The thing is, if there are things that have changed and you need to get in touch with them, then you do need to do that. If you don't update people on a change in your circumstances, if you don't update the DWP on a change in your circumstances, or your local authority, you could open yourself up to a fine. They can do an on-the-spot fine of £50, which isn't great. If it's just for something that's just administrative and it's not really a change in circumstances, it's just like you're changing your address or doing something like that, then try not to have too much fear about it. But everything can be sorted out, every problem can be solved. But as I say to people, look for that one-to-one support if you can, and or go into a lot more detail about what it is that you want to contact them about, and pop that through, sort of thing. David Darling. So I'm trying to jump between different things. So where did I get to? Lydia. Rob McCallan. What are your thoughts on the government giving themselves permission to look at bank accounts without having to apply legally anymore? Feels like an invasion of privacy. Well, legally is the thing. First of all, the government does have permission to look at people's bank accounts and has done for a long time under HMRC for a while. Anyway, so it's a sort of an extension of previous legislation, really. On top of that, they've now made it legal, so it is now legal for them to do that. They've just changed the law to suit themselves. That's what political parties do. They come in and they change legislation for whatever purpose. Do I think it's right to do that? No, absolutely not. I think it's deplorable. That's my personal view. there's a lot of arguments. The old thing that people will throw: if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. But of course, that's rubbish. Privacy isn't about hiding things. It's about being given the independence to manage your own affairs as you see fit. And it's also about a certain level of trust on the part of whatever body that you're going to do that normally, sort of thing, and that you're not out there doing anything fraudulent. And in reality, the majority of people who are claiming benefits are not in any way, and it is a huge majority. It's like 99.1%. The figures are ridiculous. Why they need to put this in place is anyone's guess. They produced a lot of figures in the summer of last year that was to justify them doing this, but there's been a lot of questions over the validity of those figures, and the government have not responded to freedom of information requests from journalists who want to sort of analyse their figures and the way that they calculated them. And just even in that report, there were a few things that they referred to, a few statistical ways of doing things. I've commented on them in the past that are, generally speaking, by statisticians not seen as particularly viable ways of reporting on things. So I always look at the previous numbers, which were solid and properly reported, and I'm kind of like, I really don't see that there's going to be a huge deal of change. There is a bit of an uptick in false universal credit claims by people that are using identity theft. When I say people, I mean like criminal gangs and stuff. And that's only because they're doing it online now. You know, if they hadn't moved universal credit to being online for everybody, we'd know the only way of doing it is online, well, then they wouldn't have had a problem with this, because it's easier to defraud using identity theft online. And I'm not suggesting that you should, in case anybody thinks that's what I'm saying. It's easier to do that online because you're not going and sitting face to face in an office with somebody handing over documents that they can verify. You're just sending in photocopies, which could be photoshopped, and typing things in, so it's kind of easy, even with the verify things that they use for your passport and stuff like that. It is much easier for criminal gangs to defraud. So why the necessity to be able to do that? It's a draconian and it is an infringement on human rights. But maybe we should all be getting out there campaigning more and doing more, being more active. I don't know if that would make a difference. Hopefully it would. When my contributory ESA moves to universal credit, will it still be non-means tested? For the duration that contributory ESA lasts for, yes, it will be, until that contributory element runs out, and then it will be. So I think it's 12 months or 6 months. I can't remember offhand. This could take a while. New style ESA. What page? Where is it? Income related ESA. No. Oh, for God's sake, this book. Sometimes you just want to flick to a quick page and it's not easy to do. Here we go. 66. Yeah, I could be sat here for a while looking for this. I can't remember offhand. It's either 6 or 12 months. But anyway, when your contributions run out, you can do a quick Google on that. When I could do a quick Google, I won't do it now. When your contributions run out, then you will be moved over onto the means tested version. So contributory ESA doesn't last forever, basically. Is there an amount you can earn selling bits and bobs online if on UC and PIP? Is it 1,000 a financial year? I can't get a straight answer online. Well, it's about your monthly income and whether or not it's a so the £1,000 a year more relates to paying tax. So if you're generating an income that's less than £1,000 a year, then you don't have to register for self-assessment as a self-employed person. So that's where the £1,000 limit comes along. With universal credit, it's a very different thing, because you would have to basically declare what income that you've got coming in, and that it is less than £1,000 a year, but they would still want you to say that you were not self-employed, but that you had some income coming in, and that your income level went up and down, and then you would have to update them as to what this income is every month, and then they would calculate whether or not that reduced your universal credit payment. So for every £1 you earn doing that, they would reduce your universal credit payment by 63p. That's how they calculate it. So anything you earn doing that, you have removed. So it's in your interest really to be doing that over £1,000, but if you do that over £1,000, then you have to tell Universal Credit that you are self-employed, and then you will have to go through the self-employment assessment to work out whether you're gainfully self-employed or not gainfully self-employed. If you're not gainfully self-employed, then you get given a work coach, and you've got to look at ways of increasing your earnings through self-employment. If they decide you're gainfully self-employed, they don't do that, but they will base that on what your income is. So then you will have to go through, you'll have to look at the minimum income floor as well. That would be applied to you after 12 months if you're in self-employment. So if you're not gainfully self-employed and your earnings aren't high enough, then they will, after 12 months, apply the minimum income floor, and they will say, well, by this point you should have been earning this much, so we're going to assume you are earning this much, even though you aren't, and we're going to reduce your payments by that much. It's about £150 a week, so you end up with nothing. Fabulous. Anyway, I think we're sort of coming to the end. It's 8 o'clock now, and I'm absolutely shattered. Whoever thought talking would be so difficult. Lots of thanks coming in, Rob. No problem, Rob. You're very welcome. Edward Brown's here. That's a good point Edward Brown's making there, actually. It's good to have an Edward on here. It reminds me of a lot of things. Christmas payments. Okay, so your benefit payments will possibly be adjusted ahead of Christmas depending on when your payment falls. So if it falls on one of those bank holidays, they will bring it forward. So if you are due to get your benefit payment on, let's say, Tuesday, which is the Christmas Eve this year, then you'll probably find that goes through on the Friday ahead of that. So yes, one thing I wish for Christmas, possibly, one thing I wish for, the DWP would get rid of that horrible music on the phone line. Been the same since the 90s. I absolutely agree, and psychologically they keep it on there so that it puts you off phoning. That's my view. I might be wrong, but come on. So yes, so thanks to everybody, all my supporters, and we don't know exactly when the benefit changes are coming into effect. Some people are reporting they're already coming into effect. So I've had a few people on the channel who are supporting a homeless charity worker, a charity worker who works for a homeless charity, fed back that a lot of his clients are finding that they're being forced into doing ESA, work capability assessments now. And I'm seeing news reports going out saying that it will start happening from January. This is relating to the autumn statement. So we're seeing stuff all the time. Anyway, I do need to take a break. So I'm going to be gone doing the live show till after Christmas now, so I wish everybody to have a lovely Merry Christmas, and as much as you possibly can. I know it's going to be really hard for some people, so just keep the faith, keep on pushing through, keep on fighting. Whatever you're dealing with, these problems are not insurmountable. As I always say, if you're going through hell, just keep going. You'll come out the other side, and that would be good, because we value you. If no one else does, we do here, so don't go anywhere, for God's sake. But yes, I'll probably put out a video or two before Christmas, and news update and things like that. Put my Christmas hat on and all that sort of thing. But otherwise, we'll be back in the new year. It might not be the first week of the month as I normally do, because obviously I'll probably have a hangover. But the week after that. But I'll put out an update as to when we're going to do it. Hopefully Becky will be coming back as well. And yeah, just everybody have a lovely time. Big thanks to the Duke of Nuke for supporting and helping me with the moderating. He's a legend, and honestly, if you knew him, he's just fantastic. So very lucky to have him as my brother. But yes, hope everybody stays well, keeps well, stays happy, all of those things. I'm going to flip over to the splash screen video. Take care, everybody. See you soon. Have a Merry Christmas.